Hi, I'm CJ from 11 News, and today I'm with Judith Richards, the creator of the Richards Trauma Process. Now, Judith, I know you want to talk about a very important issue today to do with domestic violence, and that is abuse against children and the elderly. So let's start with children. What are the different types of abuse that children can suffer from that's not physical?
Neglect. And that's not just physical needs, not just clothing, food, but that's emotional neglect as well. You know, there's some parents are so busy that they're emotionally absent. And so that child never learns to attach properly, and that impacts their relationships for the rest of their lives.
How do we tell that children have been through a type of abuse?
There's two sides of that coin. There's acting out and there's disappearing within. So it just depends on the child which way they're going to go, and some days they're one and some days the other. And you're all children who have been abused, their little immune systems shut down. They get sick. They get sick.
For a child who kind of draws himself in, is it a good idea to try and bring them out, or do you just leave them?
You don't leave them. You don't leave them. I say to my practitioners that I train, you know, psychologists, clinical psychologists, psychotherapists, doctors, etc. If you're wanting to work with a child, if a child is in need, work with at least one caregiver, one parent or foster parent, because you can take a sick fish out of a sick pond, clean it up, put it in a clean pond, it'll thrive and grow. Sick fish in a sick pond, clean it up, put it back in that pond, it'll get sick again. So you have to create the pond. You have to create the environment. Dr. Bruce Lipton wrote a seminal book, The Biology of Belief. And he was one of the first epigeneticists, showing that it's actually the environment that turns genes on and off. And so if we're in an environment which we perceive to be dangerous, well, that's going to impact genetic expression.
So if you have the right environment, the child
will thrive.
Will eventually.
Will thrive and grow. And in terms of other types of abuse with children, you know, besides neglect, and of course there's sexual abuse, we know about that. There's psychological abuse. There's continual abandonment. There's some kids, what they go through is just horrendous.
Yeah, apart from having that good environment, how else can we support them?
By supporting their parents. It's that pond again. So we always take a parent through this process to clean up their stuff. Because, you know, for example, a mum I worked with, who I mentioned to you before, whose ex used to break in the night and throw the toddler against the wall just to upset her, just to get a reaction. And she had 3 children who she had never bonded with because she was constantly in survival mode. She was just trying to keep them alive, have them survive. She had nothing, no facility within herself, nothing left to be loving and kind. It was just, where is he? What's going to happen? Go to the neighbours, run. And she had never bonded with her 3 children. And she was an Indian woman, and very diminutive, very fragile. And by the end of our 3 sessions, I met her in the post office because she was a local lady, about 6 months later. And she was in her full Indian dress, brilliant colours, looking fabulous with her 3 children hanging off her. I said, "You look great." And she said, "Yes, the mums at the school are asking me, do I have a lover?" I said, "What do you say?" And she said, "I say, yes, I have." Me. And my children, we are one, we are bonded. So people are very resilient. Once you switch their physiology back on, do that like a mobile phone factory reset. Once you do that, they just take off. So there's lots and lots of stories of fabulousness.
So just going from young to old, what about elderly abuse? What do you
There's
know
so
about?
much of that. And with lockdowns, I get so concerned. Not that we shouldn't have lockdowns, but there have been so many mothers murdered of recent months. It's a real thing. And it's a dangerous, dangerous thing. And sometimes it's just coercive control. There's that word again. To control somebody by threat or fear. And so they can be controlled financially. You know, and if they're not well, I won't bring you food. I won't bring you any groceries unless you give me your bank account, your bank card.
It'd be hard for a mother, though, to break away from that, or a father to break away from their child and say no, or shut their child out of their life if they know they're getting abused.
When it is difficult. And once again, it comes back to, I've worked with a number of mature parents. After doing this process, they come to that place, you know what? I matter. And I deserve to be treated with respect and care and love, and I'll accept nothing less because I matter and I love you. But you know what? I love me now. And I will guard me. And I will respect and love me. And that means controlling my environment. So thank you very much. When you learn to treat me with respect and care, I will welcome you back into my space.
Have you experienced an elderly person in your work that's been exploited financially and suffered abuse that way?
Oh, only hundreds. It's a common thing.
Wonder where they
Someone
are
very
now.
close to me went into a relationship with this man and wasn't allowed her own set of car keys, wasn't allowed her own bank cards, wasn't allowed her purse. She had to go and ask permission and give receipts for everything. She had and a notebook where every cent she spent was written. And she was a capable, intelligent, professional woman. And it didn't happen immediately, but it happened over time. And then she wasn't allowed to visit her family. She wasn't allowed to have friends. She wasn't allowed to have a job then. The world gets smaller and smaller.
It's probably something that's a lot more common than we think as well.
It's so common. And fear to a perpetrator, to a predator, is like blood in the water to a shark. It's like they eat it. And that's a particular type of abuser does that, the narcissist, someone with narcissistic personality disorder.
How do you spot a narcissist?
They're usually charming. You spot a narcissist by the impact they have on their partner. If their partner gets less and less, or if the narcissist is just gorgeous but then starts talking about, well, really, you don't know the true story of who she really is. Let me tell you, oh my God. And they blame the other. They project what they are doing onto them. She's controlling, she's abusive, she's manipulative, she's manipulating all her friends, she's manipulating you. She makes you think that she's lovely and gorgeous and kind. It's just a front. So when they start saying the things that you think, that's not true. But when you see that person become less, and the put downs that become more and more public.
Yeah, it's even harder in the elderly community.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that
sometimes your partner or
narcissist,
your family's your only
that
thing in your life.
narcissist can be a child, well, an adult child.
How do children become narcissists?
It's an attachment disorder, basically. So by not being loved, by constantly, they usually have a narcissist parent. Constant put downs, constant criticism, emotionally not present. So their basic needs are not met in terms of love and affection. Because we know that children, you can feed them, you can clothe them, but if they're not given love and safety, affection. The brain doesn't develop, they die. They can die.
Yeah, there's a lot of horrific stories out there.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do. And so if anyone's in need or has a loved one in need, and it doesn't have to be full-blown PTSD, garden variety anxiety, depression, and it ranges from, sounds terrible, garden variety, but it's epidemic. Every second person's suffering from anxiety or depression or flipping between the two. And it goes right up to extreme panic attacks, PTSD, and catatonic depression, where someone will sit and hardly move for years at a time.
Why is it worse than ever before?
Society's changing. There's also kids who are on screens all the time. It changes the development of the brain and it causes addiction. It's like giving them crates of whiskey at a time. There's a dopamine addiction. And they're so overstimulated, they can't focus, their brain's all over the place. And it causes, in brain development, etc., it causes depression, it causes anxiety, and it causes disconnection. And as humans, we need connection like we need oxygen. And as a society, we're starved of connection. And for some people, lockdown's been a blessing. They've reconnected with their partner, with their kids. For some people, it's been fabulous. But for others, it's been catastrophic. And, you know, if we're just kind to each other, you know, in the shops, with the person on the checkout, just kindness. It's not a lot to ask, is it?
No.